At 40,000 feet above the sleeping world, a wide-body commercial airplane slices through the night sky, its wings steady, its engines humming smoothly as clouds drift past like slow-moving shadows. The aircraft looks calm, almost untouchable, wrapped in darkness and starlight, carrying 300 passengers who trust the invisible systems keeping them alive. A child sleeps against the cold window. A businessman reviews. A presentation, a young couple whispers about the city they will see in the morning flight. Attendants move quietly down the aisle, their footsteps soft, their smiles automatic. Inside the cockpit, Captain Ethan Hale, a veteran pilot with decades of experience, watches the instruments with relaxed focus, while First Officer Lena Brooks adjusts her headset and checks the route. Everything is routine: fuel levels, normal weather, manageable systems. Green, the kind of flight pilots describe as uneventful, yet far ahead beyond the range of human senses. Unseen forces begin to align, the clouds thicken. Subtly, the air pressure shifts, and deep within the aircraft, a single sensor hesitates, then reports data that does not match reality. At first, it is nothing, a tiny inconsistency lost among thousands of readings, but then another follows. And another. The navigation system recalculates the plane's position twice in less than a second, showing two slightly different locations. Ethan notices the flicker and leans closer. Lena runs a quick diagnostic and frowns. The numbers do not make sense at this altitude. With clear skies above, the aircraft should be receiving perfect signals. Ethan requests a system reset. Confident it will resolve the issue, but when Lena completes the procedure, the screen goes dark for half a second. Before returning with more erratic data outside the cockpit, the plane glides on, unaware that its digital sense of direction is beginning to fracture. Then, without warning, the aircraft shudders, a short, sharp vibration that ripples through the fuselage strong enough to wake sleepers and rattle. Glass passengers lift their heads, confused, some laugh, nervously brushing it off as turbulence. But in the cockpit, both pilots feel the difference. This is not weather. Lena reports a spike in engine 2's temperature far outside. Normal limits. Ethan cross-checks the data, but his display now lags behind her readings, then catches up with worse numbers. The engine power fluctuates, rising and falling like an irregular heartbeat. The autopilot disconnects, forcing Ethan to take manual control as the plane dips slightly gravity, pressing heavier against every soul. Onboard seatbelt signs flash on, and a flight attendant grips a seat back to stay upright as fear quietly replaces routine in her eyes. Ethan steadies the aircraft, but the response feels sluggish, as if the plane itself is uncertain which way is forward. Lena attempts to contact air traffic control, but her call dissolves into static. She switches frequencies again and again. With no response outside the windshield, a wall of towering storm clouds looms closer, dark, massive, alive with distant lightning. The navigation system struggles to map a clear path around it, flashing warnings that contradict each other. Altitude holds, but engine 2 power drops sharply, forcing Ethan to compensate with engine 1. The aircraft yaws slightly, and passengers feel it this time. Clearly, oxygen masks tremble in their compartments, and nervous whispers spread through the cabin as a man clutches his armrest and a woman tightens her grip around her child. Lena's voice tightens as she announces partial avionics failure. Multiple systems are no longer synchronized, meaning the plane cannot fully trust what it sees. Ethan runs emergency procedures from memory. Because the checklist display freezes halfway through the page, the cockpit lights flicker, bathing their faces in alternating red and white as warning alerts stack on top of each other. Altitude caution, engine caution, navigation caution. The airplane shudders again, more violently now, and a low groan of stressed metal travels through. The cabin overhead bins rattle, and a few bags fall. Passengers gasp, and a scream breaks out somewhere near the back. Oxygen masks deploy, suddenly swinging down as the cabin pressure fluctuates. Chaos erupts. People scramble to secure masks. Children cry, adults shout prayers and pleas, while flight attendants struggle to regain order, moving through a shaking aisle that feels suddenly endless. Ethan's knuckles whiten around the controls as he fights to keep the nose level, knowing that losing too much altitude too fast could be catastrophic. But staying too high with a failing engine is equally dangerous. Lena reports that the backup navigation system is now unreliable as well, leaving them without a confirmed position, or heading at 40,000 feet flying blind is a nightmare scenario. The storm ahead blocks visual navigation, and without communication, they cannot request vectors or emergency clearance. The airplane is effectively alone, suspended between sky and earth with nothing but human skill holding it together. Ethan makes a decision to turn away from the storm using instinct and limited data, rolling the aircraft gently, but the response is delayed, then exaggerated, forcing a correction that costs more. Altitude, the plane drops several hundred feet in seconds, sending stomachs lurching in panic. Soaring in the cabin, overhead lights flicker as if struggling to stay alive. A child screams. A man pounds the call button uselessly. Lena announces that if Engine 2 fails completely, the aircraft will not maintain altitude and engine. One is already under stress, compensating for the imbalance. Every second matters. Every movement must be precise, yet the systems meant to assist them are betraying them outside. The aircraft disappears into thick cloud, its navigation lights swallowed by darkness, making it invisible to the world below and nearly to itself somewhere deep within restricted airspace far above civilian routes. A military radar picks up an anomaly, a blip moving inconsistently at commercial cruising altitude. Deviating from its filed course, the signal is faint, distorted, but alarming automated systems flag it as a potential emergency and transmit the data instantly across secure channels. The world of the passengers remains chaos, fear, and confusion, unaware that their struggle has been detected by eyes trained to watch the skies as Flight 782 continues to fight gravity storm and silence at 40,000 feet. Balanced on the edge between disaster and survival, with no idea that this moment of terror is about to intersect with a presence they will never see and a decision that will determine whether dawn ever reaches them. As Flight 782 continues its unstable descent, the interior of the aircraft becomes a living storm of fear motion and sound. The cabin tilts just enough to make standing impossible, and flight attendants drop to their knees, bracing themselves as they shout instructions through the chaos. Passengers fumble with oxygen masks, their hands shaking breaths, shallow minds racing with worst-case images. Some people cry openly, others sit frozen, staring straight ahead, unable to process the speed at which normal life has unraveled. A retired doctor moves instinctively, helping the elderly woman beside him secure her mask, while a teenager grips his phone, recording a message he never planned to send in the cockpit. Ethan forces himself to slow his breathing, knowing panic kills faster than failure. He trims the aircraft, carefully balancing thrust and pitch, coaxing stability from a machine that no longer fully trusts its own instruments. Lena cross-checks what little data remains, comparing airspeed, altitude, and vertical rate, manually calculating what the computer should be doing automatically. Her voice remains steady, but her eyes betray exhaustion and fear as she announces worsening vibration from Engine 2. The temperature spikes again, then drops suddenly, a sign of internal damage that could cascade without warning. Ethan knows this plane was designed to survive single-engine flight, but not at this altitude and not in this state, with systems fractured and weather closing in. He initiates a controlled descent, hoping thicker air below will improve engine performance. But each 1,000 feet lost feels like surrendering another layer of safety. The aircraft groans as it passes through turbulence pockets, invisible and violent, jolting bodies and thoughts alike. Overhead panels, rattle lights flicker, and a suitcase breaks free, crashing into the aisle, drawing screams from nearby rows. Lena attempts communication again, switching radios, cycling power, adjusting antennas, but the result is always the same, a wall of static, as if the world itself has turned its back on them. The cockpit grows warmer, the smell of heated electronics faint, but unmistakable, adding another layer of dread. Ethan orders the cabin crew to prepare for an emergency landing, though neither he nor Lena yet knows where that landing could possibly be. The flight attendants relay the message, their voices trained but strained as passengers look at them with desperate eyes, asking questions no one can answer outside the aircraft. Lightning flashes within the cloud mass, illuminating the wing in brief stark white, revealing ice beginning to form along the leading edge, another threat stacking onto an already impossible situation. The anti-icing system responds sluggishly, drawing power from an electrical network already under stress. Lena warns that continuing through the clouds risks ice accumulation that could compromise lift, but diverting around them without navigation is equally dangerous. Ethan weighs the options, knowing there is no good choice, only less terrible ones. He turns slightly, hoping to skirt the edge of the storm. Trusting instinct and years of experience more than broken screens, the plane responds reluctantly, then stabilizes for a brief, precious moment, giving everyone a false sense of relief. In the cabin, sobs, quiet breathing steadies, and a few people dare to believe they might survive. Then the calm snaps. Engine 2 surges violently, followed by a loud metallic bang that reverberates through the aircraft like a gunshot. Passengers scream as the plane shudders hard, dropping several hundred feet in seconds. Lena shouts that Engine 2 has suffered a major failure. its output collapsing to near zero. Alarms saturate the cockpit, overlapping, and relentless Ethan shuts down the damaged engine following emergency procedure from memory. His hands moving automatically even as his heart pounds now, the aircraft flies on a single engine far above its optimal single-engine ceiling, and the descent rate increases. Despite full thrust on engine 1, the plane is losing the fight. Against gravity inch by inch, second by second, oxygen masks remain deployed. Some passengers begin to hyperventilate, others clutch each other, whispering goodbyes, praying, bargaining, promising anything to anyone who might be listening. A man in the back begins shouting that they are all going to die until another passenger pulls him into a seat, holding him still. The flight attendants do their best, but fear is contagious and the cabin feels on the verge of collapse. Ethan announces over the intercom, his voice calm, firm, authoritative, explaining they are dealing with a mechanical issue and instructing everyone to remain seated and follow crew commands. His tone alone restores a fraction of order, because in moments like this, people cling to certainty wherever they can find it. Lena monitors engine 1 pushing, it carefully aware that overstressing it could trigger a second failure, yet without power they will descend too fast. She reports that their altitude is now well below cruising level, but still dangerously high. Given their limited options outside, the storm thins, revealing glimpses of moonlit cloud breaks and darkness below. Yet no lights, no coastline, no landmarks. Only endless night. Ethan realizes they are over open ocean, a worst-case scenario for an emergency landing. His jaw tightens. But he keeps flying, focused on the next minute. Not the final outcome. Far above them, beyond the awareness of every soul aboard, a military aircraft has altered course. Its pilot studying the same erratic blip, now moving lower and slower than any commercial flight should an encrypted message flashes, confirming a civilian. Aircraft in distress with lost communication and degraded performance authorization is granted without ceremony. No speeches, no hesitation, just action as the fighter accelerates, slicing through the upper atmosphere, closing distance, rapidly guided by sensors far more advanced than anything aboard flight. 782 back in the cockpit. Lena suddenly notices something new, not on the screens, but outside. She leans forward, squinting through the windshield at a distant moving light, approaching from above and behind at first. She assumes it is lightning reflection or instrument illusion, but the light grows steadier, more defined, moving with purpose. Ethan follows her gaze and sees it to a fast, controlled approach unlike any commercial traffic. Realization dawns slowly, cautiously. Could it be another aircraft at this altitude on this heading? Impossible, yet there it is, descending to match their speed, maintaining position just off the left wing, a dark shape against darker sky. Barely visible, but undeniably they're a presence in the void. The cabin passengers, unaware, continue their private battles with fear, while in the cockpit, Ethan and Lena exchange a look that carries shock, confusion, and a fragile spark of hope. Because whatever that aircraft is, it did not stumble upon them by chance, and for the first time since the crisis began, they are no longer completely alone in the sky. The unknown aircraft holds position just off the left wing, close enough to be seen yet far enough to remain a silhouette against the night. Its movement is precise, deliberate, matching every adjustment Ethan makes as if anticipating them. Lena's breath catches as she studies it, searching for markings, navigation lights, anything familiar, but the shape is wrong. Sleek, compact, angular, nothing like a commercial jet, and moving with an ease that defies the battered state of their own aircraft. Ethan's instincts, sharpened years of training, surfacing as he maintains steady control, refusing to make sudden moves, whatever this is. It knows they are in trouble, and it has chosen to approach, not avoid. That alone tells him more than words. Could Lena attempts to hail the aircraft on emergency frequencies, her voice firm, but hopeful, yet the radio answers only with static. The silence from the stranger is unnerving, but its presence is unmistakably intentional. The aircraft shifts slightly forward, then back, settling into a stable escort position as if saying without sound, "We are here, stay with us outside." The cockpit, the night sky, feels closer, more oppressive. Yet that single dark guardian cuts through it like a promise. The storm, clouds that moments ago threatened to swallow Flight 782, now seem to recede as the unknown pilot subtly guides them away from the worst of the weather. Ethan notices that when he adjusts, heading the stranger moves first, then waits, inviting him to follow rather than forcing the maneuver. Trust becomes the currency of survival here. Unspoken, fragile, but growing in the cabin, the turbulence eases just enough. For passengers to notice a change, the violent shaking subsides, replaced by a steady controlled descent. Oxygen masks still hang, but breathing slows. Cries quiet into exhausted whimpers. A flight attendant glances out a window and freezes at the sight of the dark aircraft pacing them. She does not announce it, unsure whether it is real or a trick of stress, but hope spreads anyway. A sense that something has shifted. Lena monitors engine. One carefully, its temperature high but stable. The plane is still losing altitude, but now at a manageable rate, as if someone has carved a safe corridor through the chaos. The unknown aircraft edges closer enough for Ethan to make out its sharp wings and distinctive intake. Design recognition hits him hard. This is military. Not just military, but advanced far beyond anything civilian. This aircraft was not meant to be seen, and certainly not meant to be here. Yet here it is flying escort for a wounded passenger jet at 40,000 feet. The implications are staggering. But there is no time to dwell. The fighter pilot performs a slow, deliberate bank, signaling a turn toward clearer air. Ethan hesitates for only a second, then follows, trusting that this unseen stranger knows the sky better than anyone. The maneuver pulls them fully out of the storm clouds, revealing open night sky, ahead stars reappearing like witnesses to a miracle. Lena exhales, realizing she had been holding her breath for minutes. The navigation system flickers again, then stabilizes slightly, as if freed from interference. The fighter remains silent, never transmitting, never identifying itself. Its actions alone speak volumes. It adjusts position, subtly correcting for turbulence, wake effects, and wind shear, providing a visual reference that allows Ethan to keep the damaged aircraft oriented when instruments lag. The cabin crew reports improved stability. Passengers sense it too. Some notice the escort through windows, pointing, whispering questions, fear giving way to disbelief and cautious relief. A child presses his face to the glass, mesmerized by the strange guardian flying so close yet so calm as minutes stretch into a tense, quiet rhythm. The fighter begins a new series of signals, gentle changes in altitude, shallow dips and climbs that Ethan mirrors, guiding flight 782 down into denser air, where lift improves and engine performance stabilizes slightly. Lena confirms that the descent rate is now within safer limits, and that electrical systems are no longer fluctuating wildly. The aircraft is still wounded, still in danger, but it is no longer spiraling toward inevitable disaster. The fighter drifts ahead, briefly, then returns to the side as if checking on them, a watchful presence, never abandoning, never demanding attention. Ethan realizes the pilot is deliberately avoiding visual identification. No afterburner, no bright lights, no radio calls. This is a professional choosing invisibility even in heroism, and that understanding carries weight, because it means this help comes without expectation of recognition, only purpose. The ocean below finally reveals itself, moonlight glinting off dark waves, a sobering reminder of how close they came to ditching, but also a sign that altitude is decreasing steadily toward survivable levels. The fighter adjusts again, banking toward a faint glow on the horizon land. Lena spots it, and her voice breaks slightly as she confirms coastal lights ahead, reachable if they maintain this path. The fighter leads them, precisely threading them through invisible airways around restricted zones and weather. Sells its knowledge of the airspace, absolute, flawless, as if the sky itself bends to its will. The cabin now buzzes with cautious whispers, people asking who saved them, some praying in gratitude, some simply staring at the wing, at the silent shadow flying beside them, unaware of the name of the pilot inside or the insignia hidden by darkness. The fighter dips its wing, once a subtle gesture, not of farewell, but reassurance as the runway lights become visible ahead. Ethan lines up the approach, his hands steady. Now, guided by a mixture of skill and profound respect for the unseen partner who carried them here, Lena runs landing checks, confirming gear deployment flaps, responding correctly. Despite earlier failures, the fighter peels slightly outward, giving them space yet staying close until the last possible moment, ensuring they are fully aligned and stable. Then just before the aircraft descends below the cloud layer and into civilian airspace, the fighter banks sharply upward, disappearing into the night without a word, without a trace, leaving only the wounded passenger jet to complete the final chapter alone. But no longer lost, no longer helpless, as Flight 782 descends toward the runway, carrying 300 lives who will never fully understand how close they came or who watched over them from the dark. The runway lights grow larger with every passing second, stretching into long white lines that cut through the darkness like a promise. Finally kept inside the cockpit, Ethan's focus sharpens to a narrow tunnel, where nothing exists except airspeed alignment descent rate, and the damaged aircraft responding just well enough to obey his commands. Lena calls out numbers, steadily anchoring the moment in precision. In discipline, landing gear locks into place with a heavy reassuring thud that reverberates through the fuselage, drawing gasps, and then applause from scattered pockets of the cabin before flight attendants urgently wave for silence. This is not over. Yet not until the wheels are on the ground and stop the fighter jet that guided them. Here is gone, now vanished upward into the night as if it had never existed, leaving behind only the impossible fact that they are alive and approaching land. The plane trembles as it passes through the final layer of turbulent air close to the ground crosswinds, tugging at the weakened frame. But Ethan counters smoothly, his movements calm, deliberate, informed by years of experience, and the quiet confidence gifted to him by the escort that brought them this far the ocean. Flashes beneath them, then disappears, replaced by dark fields and infrastructure rushing up too fast. Then just right. Lena's voice tightens as she confirms glide path and speed within limits. Despite everything, they are flying a stable approach, something that seemed unattainable less than an hour ago. The cabin is silent. Now a collective held breath, broken only by the low roar of air and engine's parents. Clutched children, strangers grip hands across aisles, eyes fixed forward, waiting for impact or relief. The ground rises rapidly, runway markings streak beneath the nose, and then with a forceful jolt, the main wheels strike asphalt tires, screaming briefly as rubber meets earth. Momentum surges through the cabin, throwing bodies forward. Against restraints, a second later, the nose gear slams down, and Ethan deploys. Reverse thrust, carefully mindful of the single remaining engine. The aircraft shudders, decelerating hard, but true brakes engage heat and vibration, traveling through the floor as the speed bleeds away. Seconds stretch endlessly, until finally, unmistakably, they are rolling, not flying, alive on solid ground. Applause erupts, raw, uncontrollable sobs, laughter, prayers, all colliding as the aircraft slows to a stop. Emergency vehicles race alongside flashing lights, painting the fuselage in red and blue. Lena slumps back for a brief moment, hands shaking, tears spilling freely now that the strain has broken. Ethan closes his eyes just long enough to feel the weight lift, then opens them again, professional to the end, as he shuts down systems and confirms evacuation is not immediately required. The cabin doors remain closed, but the tension dissolves into disbelief and gratitude. Flight attendants move through the aisles, reassuring passengers, some kneeling to comfort others themselves, overwhelmed by what they have just survived. When the doors finally open, cool night air rushes in, carrying the scent of fuel and ocean and earth. People step onto the tarmac, unsteady on their feet, kissing the ground, hugging strangers, calling. Loved ones with voices breaking as they try to explain the unexplainable. Officials arrive quickly, questions begin immediately, yet answers are incomplete. Instruments failed. Communication was lost, and then, somehow impossibly, they were guided to safety by an aircraft that does not appear on any civilian record. Radar logs show a gap, a shadow, a set of movements that defy standard explanation. Controllers exchange looks, knowing something classified brushed against something catastrophic, and chose to intervene without leaving fingerprints. News spreads fast as it always does. Passengers speak of a dark jet flying beside them, of a silent guardian that appeared when all hope was gone. Speculation explodes. Online theories clash. Some claim it was a coincidence. Some deny it happened at all, but the crew knows what they saw, and more importantly, what they felt. Control returning when it should not have presence in isolation. Guidance without words. The official report months later: will list mechanical failure compounded by weather and communication loss. It will credit pilot skill, crew coordination, and favorable conditions for the safe landing. There will be no mention of the escort, no acknowledgement of the shadow that bent fate quietly back toward survival, because somewhere high above in restricted airspace, a fighter pilot has already landed, shut down, and walked away from his aircraft. His mission logged as routine, his actions unspoken. Even among peers, he will not see the faces he saved, will not hear the cheers or read the messages of gratitude. He will return to training, to readiness, to the quiet understanding that some victories are never meant to be claimed, only carried the passengers of flight. 782 will return to their lives changed in subtle and profound ways. Some will fear flying, others will cherish it more deeply. All will remember the moment. The night sky answered them when no one else could, and though they may never know his name or rank or even the exact aircraft that flew beside them, they will remember. The feeling of not being alone at 40,000 feet when the world went dark and gravity seemed unstoppable, they will remember that in the vast indifferent sky, there was intention, skill, and restraint, a human decision to protect without recognition, and that knowledge will follow them long after the headlines fade, the runway empties, the emergency lights dim, and the airport returns to routine, but the story remains carried quietly by 300 lives who crossed the edge and were guided back by an unseen hand in the sky.